back to PH Chalk Up. I'm your host, Manny, and today we have Val Hale. How we doing?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Um, we were speaking in the lobby, but before this even started, um, I really needed to get both Hales on, and I finally did it. Um, this is a very proud moment for me because I know how hard it is to get two coaches from the same family on. You're the first pair I've ever gotten, so
Yes,
I love it.
I love it. That's awesome.
But before we start, if you let us know who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are. Have you ever wondered how I'm able to run my business, my podcast, and still be able to coach? Well, I use TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is an all-in-one coaching software that reduces the amount of time that we spend on the back end of programming, on our Google Sheets, on our Excels, and allows me more freedom to do testing. With this podcast and episodes, I'm actually able to run some programs that I learned through different coaches coming on. To find out how you can use TeamBuildr and how it can apply to your own program, visit the link in the description and catch yourself a 30-day free trial. Just simply use code PACHALKUP, that's PACHALQUP, and start the next stage of your coaching career.
Sure. So my name is Valerie Smith-Hale. I guess I have a PhD, so doctor if you want to, but everyone just calls me Val. Let's see here, how I got started and what I'm doing, where I'm from. So I'm from originally Wyandotte, Michigan, so just south of Detroit. I went to Adrian College for undergrad. I went to my master's was at Central Michigan University, and my PhD work was at Wayne State University. So currently, I'm at the University of Notre Dame. How I got here was, I feel like it's like the version of Elf where he went through the sea of swirly twirly gumdrops. It's not like your traditional route to get to where I'm at, but I did an undergrad internship with a guy named Jeremy Hoy down in Pittsburgh. I worked for a place called Finish for Sports Performance, left there, went to my master's degree where I did another internship where I worked with Jim Kilbasso. At the time, it was called Total Performance Training Center. Now I think it's called Impact. And then from there, I actually took like a little break and I was a bobsledder for a little while. So, competed in like North America's Cup, was not an Olympian, not in World Cup, but I always say that was like such an important part of my life because I met some amazing human beings and really learned how to like train in like a quad cycle, and be around coaches who were like, that was their format. So me being a strength coach, I was like, this is so cool. Like, how can I be a part of something like that? Also, how can research help us figure out how to train people? So when I came back home, I wasn't sure if I was going to coach or keep training or do a PhD. And I met my husband when I came home. So at the time was my boyfriend, but I met Fred and we started dating. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to be done with the athletic side, but how do I become like a researcher or coach? So we were chatting and he was like, maybe you should go PhD route. So while I was working my PhD, I worked with a coach named Mike Barwis, who I trained with during my bobsled career. And I worked with Ruben Mendoza at Wayne State, where I did my PhD research, and I also coached with him. So I had the throwers there, and I helped out with football. And then my husband called me one day and was like, "Hey, we're actually moving to Notre Dame." And I was like, "Okay, what am I going to do at Notre Dame? Am I going to do research? Am I going to coach? Like, what are we going to do?" And this job was open, so I applied and I got it. So, this is going on our 5th year here. So 5 years later, I've been an assistant strength coach here, and we love every second of it.
Nice.
Yep.
There's obviously quite a lot, but I kind of want to get into the bobsled. I didn't know this. Um, so how do you think that sort of helped going from athlete to then coaching and sort of how did that link for you?
Yeah. So I played volleyball in college. I guess I forgot that too. So I was an undergrad, I was a volleyball player. And I think when you're an athlete at whatever level you're at, whether it's college, if it's professional, if it's amateur, it really teaches you like dedication and drive. And this like you have to be disciplined. You've got to wake up and go do the workouts. You have to push your body to limits that you never thought you could. And where I was really intrigued is I worked with a lot of different coaches, and everybody was always working on the same thing, right? We want to get stronger, faster, more explosive, but they all use different methods on how to get there. And I
Mm,
always thought it was just the coolest thing that you could do different things to get the same output, but you had to do it within your time constraint or the group of people that you had. So, for example, mine and Fred's second argument we ever got into. The first one was he didn't let me spot him benching. Like I was very upset about that. But the second argument we ever
Fair.
got into was he showed me his volleyball lift that he had wrote for a group of girls at Eastern Michigan, and I was like, "This is all you're doing? Like you're not doing a warm up like this, and you're not thinking about it in like a 4 year plan for these individuals." And I just went like Olympic side strength coach to him, and he
Mm.
was like, "Val, I have 45 minutes. They're coming from practice. They have to be out the door. Like there's all the," and I never thought about it that way. And I was like, wow, okay, this is super interesting because every coach has their things that they're working with or against. And my mind just like started flowing, right? And how to be able to translate that with athletes quickly and get the outcomes that you need. So um I miss being an athlete every day. Sometimes I tell myself I'm still one, but I feel like if you're a mom, you're kind of like an athlete still.
That's a very um, amazing point that you've just made, and it's the collaborative work that you can do at home, and it's so like I always love to bounce programs off people and vice versa. But what's it like having that at home? Just being like, hey, not home per se, but like having your husband that you can be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the constraints. What's your thoughts?
It's the best. I think that's like one thing that we understand what the career demands are, and but we can help each other. So, and I say that all the time. I'm like, hey, we have to use each other. Like we both have strengths and
Mm.
we both have weaknesses, and I feel like a lot of Fred's weaknesses are my strengths, and vice versa. So um, uh, we honestly probably talk too much about it at home sometimes, just in terms of just like programming, right? Like, hey, I'm running
Mhm.
into this road gap. What would you do for this return to play? Like, how have you made this better? Or different squatting techniques. Like kids come in sometimes with like these crazy squatting techniques, and my husband is really, really, really good at squatting, and he's really good at coaching it. And sometimes just coaching male and females are completely different. And me being a female trying to coach male athletes, although everyone respects me, sometimes I'm not anatomically a guy. So the things that I feel when I put a barbell on my back are different than a man. So he's actually given me really good coaching cues on different things to say to some of my male athletes. And when he was coaching female athletes, it was kind of the same thing. I'm like, hey, don't, like, have you thought about saying it like this? Because they just have different tissue that's going to get in the way when they're going to try to do something. So I love it. It's been super helpful. And he's also, when I was working my PhD, I would like throw different ideas at him or give him research articles all the time. So we try to help each other out as much as we can.
Which is quite an interesting thing as well. So we kind of spoke in the lobby about having research and doing research, but obviously it has to be applicable for the field and what we do as coaches. What's your thought process when you're sort of creating these questions for research, and then how you carry them out and make sure that they're actually something that can help further the field?
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to go and to get my PhD was so that I could help coaches and I could help athletes. And it could be something that was like applicable now versus waiting, 10,
Mm.
12, 15 years, or, like it ends with like, well, we're going to actually do these. And I love that it still ends with more research being done, but what are some nuggets that some coaches can take home now, and how can this be helpful for not only performance but also just like injury reduction or whatnot. So um, I think research questions should always have that in the back of your mind if you're working in this field. And then with on the flip side of that, you also have to take things with a grain of salt. So I think that
Mm.
sometimes different research questions may not fit your population. It may not fit the constraints that you have, even if it is done with NCAA, Division One, football athletes or whatever it is, and you're working Division One football athletes, it may not work for you. And that's okay
Mhm.
because it may give you another idea on how to take things to the next level for your team. And I think that's like where sometimes we get so caught up in like, what's the new thing? Well, like, why don't we just do really good right now? And then let that open up the door for different problems that we may have and how to address those things.
And we spoke again about this, but it's like it's knowing what nuggets to pull as well.
Yep.
And so our conversation was based on research in itself is quite like a percentage of what can be done, and it's that again. I've mentioned Paul Comfort before, and he's been on. But that's why I really love his type of research. He was a coach, a high level coach for so many years. Actually, he's currently in a space program, developing some equipment for astronauts. Very cool.
Very cool.
But he essentially all his research is based on his previous experience as a coach, and continues to develop his questions, and his whole PhD program is based on making sure that researchers are doing applicable research. And to me, that's always fascinating, because when you know how hard this industry is to, again, at the division one, the 1% really fucking matters,
Hmm.
like the 1% improvement. So it's trying to get these little nuggets to make sure that everyone is progressing in a linear way.
Yep.
And again, that linear way can be fluctuating, it can be whatever, but it's still progressing.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. I think that that was like the number one caveat, or how the my PhD dissertation got started was, we were like, why are people spending so much money on technology? I mean,
Mm,
the amount of bills that you get sent in, right? It's like 20, $30,000 sometimes for some of these equipments, and it's just a licensing fee. So it doesn't even include, right, like keeping up with
the
the
equipment
product
itself, yeah.
itself. Yeah, and so that was what we wanted to do. We wanted to see if it was worth buying. So, like, it could the athletes tell how hard they were working? Could the coaches tell how
Mhm,
hard they were working? Was there any relationship between the two with football, because it's a high contact sport? And that we found out that the coaches were actually the best at looking at how hard the athletes were working. They were the closest
mhm.
relationship to their trim score.
Nice.
Which I thought was just, I like, for us, we were like, "Wow, that's super interesting that even
Mhm,
the athlete," but that brought up the other idea, we talked a little bit about this, more of, like, the psyche part of working with
mhm,
athletes, is that in our dissertation, or, like, in our follow-up, we found that as the days went on, we did, like, a preseason camp, so the 7 days that they were in camp, by the time they got to the last day, even though it was the easiest practice, they were the most recovered from HRV perspective, that was their one of their harder practices. And they were
mm,
so off kill with that, but it was because of the consecutive days of training, right?
mhm,
And so all of that is additive. So even though the load was lower, even though their recovery was higher, that was the last day of the week, and they knew that next day was like an off day. So I think that that's another thing to keep in mind, is that you have
mhm.
to think about the psychological aspects of the athlete and where they're at and how they're feeling, and how can you meet them in the middle?
That's what brought this conversation on about the research is, and I was kind of mentioning the differences between the US and UK coaching, and across we're a little bit more science heavy, and we had mentioned that if the athlete is feeling shit, chances are you're not getting the best performance. So it's, yeah, I I did a lot with sports psychology during my bachelor's, and it's kind of like what I'm looking into now, where it's, let me check the physiological and the psychological impact of the menstrual cycle on this athlete, because currently we don't actually know if it's actually a physiological thing, or if it's a psychological thing, or if it's both, and
Sure.
how are they actually impacting. So it's, again, most of these podcast episodes is talking about, like, and Missy Mitchell Macbeth actually put it the best way. Like, you have to give a shit about your athletes. Like,
Mhm.
that comes first.
Yep.
Your programming and periodization can come second.
Amen. So true. Yep. You got to love what you do, and you got to love the people that you're working with. And I call them, they're my first children. So before I got pregnant with Georgia, those were my kids. And I treated them like that. I tell their parents when they drop them off, my job is to take care of them. And I will do my best to take care of them in every way possible.
Yeah, you do with, I don't know what soccer is, but you keep mentioning soccer. Um, I always have a laugh with coaches that do football and they say soccer on the podcast.
Love it.
But you've obviously got football. What are some of the main things that you consider well programming, and limitations of? I Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a whole season for that, isn't it? I don't know how the competition blocks work across there.
Oh, yep. So we've got like they follow kind of like similar to football. So they're a fall sport for us.
Okay.
They've got like an in season in the fall. So their in season kind of goes from like August to, if they go all the way to national championship, it's the first week of December. then they'll get some time
Mhm.
off, they'll come back, and then we have, like, a little mini spring season, but it doesn't count for anything, but it's, like, basically, like, 5 scrimmages that you get, and then the athletes will go home for summer or stay here, whatever their choice is.
So when you're programming for that, what are some of the key principles that you have to have in your program to make sure that they've got the best chance to have a good, successful season?
Yeah, so, we usually what we do every block, and what I mean by block is, like, summer, fall, spring, myself, the coaching staff, and our athletic trainer, and anyone else who wants to be part of the conversation, we'll kinda sit down and go over, what are the overall arching goals of this phase, whatever that is. So we'll take this summer, for example. And so right now it's like we want to build, and this is my head coach. She's like bulletproof to injuries, right? We want to try to
Mm,
reduce the amount that we have. We want to make them strong. We want to make them fast, and we want to make them resilient and tough. Those are kind of like the overarching like goals or themes for this like summer to get them ready for their in season. Um, that may change from time to time, but I feel like a lot of those kind of stay the same, right? We want them fit, we want them strong, we want them
mhm,
resilient to injury, and then depending on the group that we have, there may be something else that we want to work on. So, whether was there an injury that popped up quite frequently? Like, how can we reduce that as much as possible? For example, we always see a lot of like foot and ankle based things. I know that part of that is just due to the sport, so we'll actually sit down and do a lot of research and try to see if there's anything else that we can add into the program to make it super simple. Like for example, we added in like a heavy seated dumbbell bent kneecap raise because there's a lot of
mm,
research that shows that putting that load on the foot and on the ankle will help reduce the amount of ankle injuries or some extensive pogo based stuff before practice. So those are some things that like it's more of a collaborative approach. And then we'll sit down and I'll write that training block out with those things in mind. So some things that I usually try to check box is do I have some sort of like strength based movement, like bilateral? I usually try to make sure that there's a squat involved in there. I'm an Olympic based coach, so I usually like some sort of velocity or Olympic based progression
mhm,
first, some sort of strength movement, and then some sort of unilateral adductor, knee, hip, ankle. Those are like my big factors that I try to incorporate in for every lift. And then from there, build out if anybody has any correctives or any extra that we need to do from there. But those are kind of my big ones. I try
mhm,
try to keep it as simple as possible. Olympic, major, unilateral, injury reduction based work, and that's kind of how our off season goes. I do fluff that up a little bit with some pushing and pulling and some extra post chain in there, but for the most part, that's kind of how I build out my blocks. And then as we get into in season, those steps and reps decrease. I might take one of those blocks out if we just don't have the time to do it and or it doesn't make sense to do it, but that usually tries to come more towards November once we're getting into like that
mhm.
true taper into postseason.
Obviously, so football is quite a COD heavy sport.
Mhm.
With your unilateral work, how much are you also including like hamstring, quad ratios to make sure that they're healthy enough to cut and accelerate and decelerate?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I'm still honestly like figuring out what that perfect sweet spot is, but I'll tell you what we have done, and I feel like we have, knock on wood, had some good success with it. So every day in training, we our coach usually tells me what that training focus is going to be for the day. So whether it's going to be like small sided, whether it's going to be bigger, short and sharp, usually is the term that he likes to use, and then are we going to go bigger, more extensive base work? If we're going to go smaller, we'll do a lot of prep in the warm up. So we'll add some cutting, we'll add some change in direction, we'll add some unilateral base movements that are out there, some like single leg plyos, some basic cutting, some change in direction, stopping and going. And then weight room based to couple some of those things. My quad to single leg to post chain ratio, I always try to make sure that we get a little bit more post chain than we do quad.
Mm,
I always try to incorporate Nordics in at least once a week. In season, I've struggled to get like a solid RDL in because it just creates so much DOMs due to the
mhm,
inconsistencies or the amount of time spacing between weight room sessions. So we try to get a lot of like heavy glute bridges, whether it's elevated or on the ground. And those are like my primary like post chain exercises that we'll utilize kind of throughout season. So we try to get at least two of those in per lift.
on that, I because I know that that's a big issue with RDLs, the
Mhm.
posterior chain, while in season. So I had the conversation. I actually think it was on the CHP app. Um, And the coach was mentioning that he actually does blocked work for that. So instead of making sure that they're going all the way to feel the stretch and back up,
Okay.
they're actually doing not eccentric, just blocked phase.
Just the
So like have
concentric.
them
Yeah.
stack them up to make sure that they're still getting the RDL in, but they're not going full ROM to take away the DOM's feeling from them.
That's awesome. I actually probably should. I also try to give myself a little bit of like grace, and we usually do sort of some sort of like Olympic, whether it's a
Hmm.
right, like I'm
I
sorry, a
fully support
incline,
that.
a jump. Yeah, exactly. And so when we're doing that, I'm like, well, we're kind of getting that motion in
Yeah,
there. And
yeah.
then can we incorporate a little bit on the field? So I've even done Nordics on the field, like in an attempt to reduce the amount of DOMs from when they're in the weight room. So we
Mm,
usually always get 1 week, 1 day a week, and then we usually go to like an optional on the day two. I think if I can get a consistent day two, that I would do them more regularly, because then at least I know they're going to get it dosed in like
mm,
every couple days versus every 7 to 10 days. And then no matter what, when they grab the weight, they're just sore. And it's not that it's bad, but I think that they can work through glute soreness a lot easier than they can hamstring
mm.
soreness. And
Yeah.
the ACC schedule, they play 2 games a week for the most part. So we play on Thursday
Damn.
and Sunday. Yeah. So that's our other caveat, is that yes, I want them to still maintain and still try to get stronger if we can earlier in the year before we hit the heart of our ACC schedule, which is usually our tougher games. Um, it is managing that, right? And so if I wanted to be just like a science-based coach and not care about how they feel, I would just tell everyone to do it and like not care. And there are times for that, but there are also times where they have to go and run, 7 to 10 miles, and
Mhm,
they have to be able to sprint and change direction. And if they're going to go to coach and explain like, hey, I'm just so sore, I can't move right now, I'm not doing them a good service as a strength coach who's in season with them. A little bit of soreness is okay. I think that's normal and
mhm.
fine, but I try to be conscious of the fact that like I am asking them to do a lot in here and on the
Yeah.
field.
So with having the 2 games a week, off season, how do you prepare them for the mileage that they will have to cover during in season?
Yeah. So we usually do 3 lifts a week in our off-season training blocks. So January through mid-March, and then we do another dose of that in the summer.
Oh, so
And
you're
so
currently in it.
oh, yeah, we're in it. Yeah. So, yeah, and the girls, they love it. So I think like what's cool is that they all know that them lifting 3 days a week, they're still able to train hard. But we just don't have the outside pressure of like winning a
Mm,
game and performing at like the highest that you can. We've kind of taught them, or at least I've tried to over the years, of like there are times where things are heavy in the weight room, right? And heavy conditioning, and they're like limited soccer, right? Or they're not as like maybe high stakes soccer. And then there are times where soccer is like the big one. And then these other two are on, we've already done the work, right? So I always tell them we want to build like the best ice cream sandwich I've ever had, but we have to have all the ice cream built up before you can
mhm,
add all the toppings on top of it. And so usually 3 days a week in the weight room. And then from a running standpoint, we actually try to slow build them. So I know that there's a lot of
mhm,
teams that do like, only conditioning for January and February, and they don't do any of their 8 hours from an NCAA standpoint. Our coach actually likes to integrate that into training. So we'll try to do as much conditioning work in the training session, and we'll do like 1 to 2 days a week. And then that will slowly start to ramp up as we get into like the games that we'll play. So the
mhm,
5 games, then they'll get a little bit of a rest, and then we ramp up the conditioning. So then from there, it's this. If you're not playing a ton of soccer, you'll have like kind of 3 different avenues that you can go. One is you're doing Val's packet as prescribed, which is like you're running 5 days a week with like an optional non-impact day. You're either doing 3 to 4 runs a week. You're playing soccer maybe twice a week. You're lifting 3 days a week, or you're maybe getting 2 lifts in per week. I always try to push them to get 3, but honestly, if they can't because they're playing on multiple teams or they're with their national teams, I try to at least get them 2 lifts a week, 2 to 3 runs per week. If possible, they'll usually call me. We'll sit down and make up a schedule if we need to, but
mm,
we run the yo-yo test as our conditioning test. So in my opinion, you at least need like 2 runs just to practice changing direction, cutting, and the intensity has to be very high. So outside of that, if you're at least getting your aerobic based work with playing, then 1 or 2 of your runs can just be short, sharp, cut, change in direction. Let's do it before you do a lift. or on like a after a practice and move on from there.
That's interesting. So when I was at UW with Coach Mac, I and this is why me another reason that me and Fink really connected afterwards as well. And it's I get very fascinated with the way that people program, the whys and the like little nuances that people do to make sure that what they want is in the program, if that makes any sense.
Mhm,
So like for Coach Mac, you'll probably have remembered it, but he does a 5 tier system,
mhm,
4 exercises in each tier. They're usually 15, 15 to 20 seconds per exercise, and you get done through them quickly. Um, so the 5 tiers is a tier for each quarter, and the fifth for overtime. But um, within each tier, there's 4 exercises, 4 periods, and it equates to 15. I can't remember if it's 15 seconds or 15 minutes per block. Um, again, that's again related to the football timings,
mhm.
but he pairs these exercises because he's getting some conditioning in there as well,
Yep,
because you're having to go from one to the one to the one to the one
yep,
and just keep going. So he's working on all about conditioning off field
yep.
and still being able to push numbers and strength to keep going up. Like I found that it's like I walked into his office, I was like, "Is this what you do?" And he's like, I was like, "Oh, sick." And
I
then
probably honestly do a little bit of that, right, with my tier system based approach, but I love him. Gosh, that's awesome.
yeah, and then Fink was the same. I was like, "What's your thought process and methods behind programming?" His first thing was, "What's your email? Send me a textbook, the tier system." And I was like, "Sick." So then that kind of further helped me realize what was going on behind the scenes and what he's having to think about. One of the most mind blowing things that now, like when he said, I was like, why isn't everyone fucking thinking about this? And
Mhm,
it's the push to pull ratios
mhm,
and how they have to equal out, even if it's like a strength based upper body and a hypertrophy lower body.
mhm.
Like they still all have to add up and make sense to what we're performing. So it was awesome that you broke it down that way as well, because yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think everybody like, it's probably like a million like I think I said earlier, there's a million different ways to probably get to the same goal, but working with your coaches and your athletes, what makes sense for you, and we don't require our kids to be here for the summer. So my runs need to be simple, they need to be effective,
Mm,
and they need to know when they do this run, they're prepping for this, right? Whatever that is, if
yeah.
it's a longer run, if it's a shorter run, and they have to be able to go out, get it done, and move on, right? Because we all know that I think conditioning is not everyone's favorite thing to do. So,
So you did a lot of research on heart rates and HRV.
mhm.
How do you then apply that to their conditioning based programming?
Yeah. So here at Notre Dame, I actually don't have heart rate monitors for our girls. I wish I did,
Okay.
but
Are you
I have.
using Polar?
We're using I was using, First Beat actually is what I used
Okay.
for my dissertation. So, they were awesome, but, like, I had a limited budget, so Polar was just like
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that's why we ended up going and we got the recovery metric, which we thought was awesome. So, but here we just use Catapult. So I just have GPS
Okay.
on all of them when they run. But what I have done is I do have some girls that have to work on some aerobic based conditioning that's like additional to what they're doing. And load is load, right? So it's like, how do you help an athlete work on something that is a goal of theirs to like increase aerobic fitness while they're still going to practice? And we need them to like work hard while they're out there because they either need to put their best foot forward to try to earn a spot on the field or they need to put their best foot forward to help their teammates get better, right? So I would do a lot of extra like bike conditioning with them and I would use heart rate for
Mm,
that. So because I was like, we need to get a dose in that's effective for this energy system. And so the best way to do that is to look at heart rate and try to hit the zones that we need to hit. So I'll do a lot of like interval bike work and I'll
mhm,
have them use their a lot of like most kids have Apple Watches anyway. So
mhm,
I did sneak a couple of polar heart rate monitors from our sports science person at the time, and we would put them either like have them wear a chest strap heart rate monitor and put them in like zone 2, 3, or 4, and we would have them do interval based work, or I would have them use their Apple Watch. But what's cool about the Apple Watch is they can do it when they go home too. So we've actually found some
Mhm.
different ways that athletes like to get fit. Yes, you still need to run, but can they dose in like a bike workout or two during the week that would help them feel a little bit better and help them inch their way towards that goal of increasing the aerobic capacity for the field?
I'll at the end, I'll actually send you a link to an app that you can get their Apple Watch data from Excel.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
I found it. So I like to see Excel and I like to make my graphs.
Yes, yes. Graph the data, graph the data, graph the data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had an Apple Watch and I was like, I need to get this data from my Apple Watch and I just need it. So I hunted for it. I'll send you that so you can get your athletes on it.
Oh, that's awesome. I would love it. Yeah. So that's what's been probably the most helpful. I feel like transferability. However, I love it. Like I think that like
Mhm,
the gold standard is, I think from a research point of view, is to have both, right? So if you can have something that where you can do both, but I think from like a practicality standpoint, the GPS is great for soccer based athletes because it does give you but like I feel like the research is so robust with the GPS
mhm,
data that like I'm very curious to see if the heart rates would tell us anything different. Like if they are working at a really high level or not, because it's just this movement based system. I wish we could have them in both. But I do think it would give us some really cool, interesting positional based data differences
mhm.
between the different groups and what they do and what we're asking them to do.
It also depends a lot on their playing style.
Yes,
And
yes, I
I've
forgot about that. Yeah, we play a crazy style from every time I talk to a different team that, like, watches us play, they're like, "You guys are crazy," and I'm like, "I love it, though. It's great. Be
I'm
afraid."
guessing it's very attack focused.
Yeah, we press a lot. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know the head S&C coach at Rangers ladies, and I watched their semi and their final just this weekend past, and like she's the exact same style as you. Like they're very press forward. Like they won their final 3-0, so it was a dominant performance,
That's
and
awesome.
the physicality, like how strong they are as well. Like they
Mhm.
weren't getting moved off that ball at
Mhm.
all, and they were just like the pace was just there the whole time. And what a lot of people don't consider that are within these sports is like say football, basketball, even like can we say yeah we can yeah baseball, softball. They've all got periods in which they play. But if you're in a sport that's like 45 minutes on, you then get a couple minutes off, and then you're another 45, depending on whether there's stoppages or overtimes or whatever else. Is like they need to not only have the mileage ability in them, but have the ability to perform the same on minute one and on minute 95 or 100 or 105.
Yeah. The first time I ever watched a soccer football game, was
I'll tell you what, you say football, I'll say soccer.
I love it. Okay. So the first time I ever watched one live, okay, was actually one of our games. It's so embarrassing now, but I just wasn't exposed to it growing up. Like we didn't have a soccer team at my high school. We didn't, or sorry, a football team at my high school.
That's it's all good. It's all good.
We did not have like I didn't have it growing up regularly. So I just played volleyball and basketball and ran track. And so I'm at this game and I was like, I looked at our athletic trainer and I was like, are they going to call timeout? Like, I think the girls need a timeout. Like, I think that they like, and she was like, sorry, they were like, there's no timeouts in soccer. I was like, okay, hold on. So they just have to keep going. And thankfully, like, then I learned, like, like other national teams, they don't have subs and like we have subs. And so like we can make subs, but once you pull them out in the first half, you can't put them back into the second half. But it was wild to me. And then after that, I was like, I work with the coolest, strongest, toughest athletes that I've ever been around in my entire life. Like that when I look at us, when I look at a soccer athlete, that is what I think. I just am like, if you're playing at a really high level, like our team is and beyond, you are just like mentally, physically able to take yourself places that I could never imagine going. And I love that I get to be a part of their journey to help them bridge that gap because they do have to be strong and they have to be fit and they have to be physical. And the best players in the world can do all of those things to like
Mhm.
the best of their ability.
I so one of my lecturers college, she was in the Olympics for hockey, field hockey. I always forget that if I say hockey, you'll think ice. But field hockey. So she's like elite. She's now in Scottish Masters ladies. Like she's still like unreal at hockey, but she coaches a lot of the national teams for development squads and all that stuff. One of the most interesting things she's ever said to me was that she runs heart rate percentage subs. So instead of being like, okay, you've played this much, you're subbed off, because they've got like rolling subs. What she'll do is she'll have like a device where everyone's heart rate is like being attached to it. She'll let people play a certain number of minutes in the red zone. As soon as they're in the red zone for that amount of time, they get subbed off. They get like subbed off for a couple minutes until like they're fully recovered,
Mhm.
and then they go back out. So it's like on rolling. Like if you hit that that heart rate percentage for this long, you get subbed off. Someone else goes on, and then I'll just like keep rolling on through that. Like I found that very fascinating.
Super interesting. We actually have a drill in practice, like, where basically they do that, but it's like you just go until you can't run anymore, and then coach will sub
Mm-hmm.
you off. But it's just to get some of that, like, built-in capacity, right? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, 'cause imagine the intensity that you can play at if that's what you know is like, it's not a bad thing to get subbed off. It's not
Mm-hmm.
it's just solely performance-based, right? Like, it's just physiological, like, I want you to go until you cannot go anymore, right? And then we're gonna pull you off, you're gonna get a break, and then we're gonna throw you back in. I mean, that's like ice hockey, right? Like that's like
Mm-hmm.
what they try to do. Like you keep fresh legs on the ice so that you can play at this like super high intensity the entire time.
How do you combat the psychological element of, okay, it's time for you to sub off when they're still wanting to be in the game, to make sure that they win and they perform and help their team sort of perform at the best?
Well, since I'm not the head coach and I don't have to make the decision, I feel like that's really nice. However, I do think that messaging from the coaches is like key in all of this, right? So if there's a strategy and the strategy is that you are going to, like we're going to full press like in the first 15 minutes of this game and your only job is to go after the ball, right? Like wherever that is and make these runs in behind that if there's like this strategy plan out of it that they understand what their role is. And then if they get to go back in, that's great. But if not, then, you keep working on getting better at whatever it is that they want you to keep doing. And if you can do it for longer. So I think that if the coach's messaging is this is
Mm,
strategy, hopefully that they have a better understanding of why they're subbing when and whatnot. I think that helps a lot. When there's a lack of clarity in that, I think that's when athletes get really like emotional about when they get pulled or why they get pulled. I think that the more transparent that coaches can be on the
mm,
why of that, the better it is. And then if I can help in any way, whether that is like preparing them better from a physiological perspective, if we can work on recovery based modalities in between the two games that we play and like whatever that is, like I'm happy to help in with that or fill the gap in for them, right? But I do think that the more transparent coaches can be with their game plan and what they want to do helps the athlete's psychological needs be at ease when they do get pulled or when they get put into a game situation. Like, what is the plan? What's my job here? What can I do to help our team win? And then go from there.
with having 2 games a week most times, what's your recovery plan to make sure that they're still able to play the whole season at the same level as they started? Because like
It's a
that's
lot.
heavy.
It's
That's
heavy,
heavy.
yeah. So one thing or let me backtrack. So when I first got here, our coach, our athletes would always call it game day 2. So after a game is over with, so we play on a Thursday, Friday would be game day part 2. So if you didn't play high minutes or you didn't play at
Mm,
all, you would practice that day. All of our high minute players or high load base players would come there. They would do a light warm up, maybe a little bit of movement, and then I actually bring recovery modalities out to the field for them. So we'll do a foam rolling station. I've got like a tempering tool that I'll bring out to practice. We'll do recover like band stretching. We'll do lacrosse balls. Prior to that, they can or after they can get into cold tub, warm tub contrast. And then we have massages for the athletes too. again, if you're high minute player or high load based player for us. So that's kind of what we do on the Friday. And then on Thursday, it's on Friday, sorry, Saturday. So Saturday, that is practice is a little bit more strategic on like whatever we need to work on. Then versus like the Wednesday before the game, that one might be a little bit more intense. Saturday's like turned down a little bit, but still kind of the same things. Like we try to run a little bit of shadow play, a little bit of strategy on what we're going to do game wise. And then we try to wrap it up as quickly as possible to get them on the field for Sunday. Another thing that we're trying, so that's when I first got here. So we still
Mhm.
do those same kind of components, but now that we've had a lot of data, I've actually built out a system where we have positional based averages based on the playing style that we have, which we've been doing now for this will be the fifth year that we've done this style of play. Don't ask me what it is because I forget it every time. I know that we have 3 center backs, okay? Go from there, and we've got 2 forwards up top. So, what happens in the midfield still confuses me, and I know we have 2 wide player actually, I'm doing a good job. 2 wide players, 2 eights. My coaches would be really proud
So
of me.
a 3-5-2.
Yes, that sounds right. Yes, 352. So our wing backs get a lot of mileage in. They get a ton in. So what we've done is I've created this system where we've got positional based averages and we've got team based averages. And what we try to do right now is we try to get 3 game loads a week in for practice. So if we know that 2 games are going to be 100%, or if we can pull them
Mm,
out of the game
mhm,
early, can we save some load on their legs? Reason we try to do this is last year we ran into a time period where we only had like 1 game a week for a month. And we were like, oh, great. Like we can recover, like we can take time off. But then when we played the 2 game loads and they were against top 10 teams in the country, we actually saw this increase in like just some soft tissue, like, hey, this kind of hurts. This, thankfully, nothing
Ah,
terrible, but it was enough where for a couple of our athletes where they were out for a little bit. And so we know from an acute to chronic workload ratio, like that is not good. So even though we loved the rest and we loved that idea, it
mm,
actually like backfired because we didn't do
yeah,
enough in some of those down weeks. So now if we can, maybe every week isn't 3 exactly, it's a little less or a little above, but that's kind of like the gold standard, not only for the high minute players, but also the low minute players, because
mhm,
we need to keep them fit because they may have to
yep,
go in and play 90 minutes and we only have so many people on the roster, right? Or positionally that can play some of these in these games and in certain situations. So that's kind of what we go off of now. So we try to keep practices to the absolute minimum or minimal dose, but get done the work that needs to get done leading into the games. If we have a 2 game a week or a 1 game a week, we will load differently on those practices. And then if we have to, we can always like sit players out of certain things if we need to. So we thankfully we haven't gotten to that point. But what I always tell the girls this in our off-season training and in our summer training is you are putting money in the bank, like you are depositing
mm,
all off season, right? And it is because all in season we're just taking out, right? So if I've got to take out like $10 here, $5 here, $200 here for a game, you have got to do everything we can do, right? To like maintain as much as we can because by the time we get to December, we don't get to put anything else in the bank, right? Like you are just pulling out. And so if we can maintain a level of fitness, a level of strength that is here versus here, because we know there's going to be a residual drop off, but can we just like stop that leak as much as we can? And we're trying to do that by maintaining 2 lifts a week in the weight room, managing load on the field to 3 games a week, and then doing whatever recovery helps work for that athlete. I like to say that we have like an umbrella of different modalities and we want the athletes to do what's best for them. So some people don't
mhm,
love contrast. Some people like Normatec pants or needling or cupping. Like, can we do what works best for you to help you with this recovery in between? And part of that is fueling. So like making sure that they're getting exactly what they need to get after each session is done is really important to us, especially while we're in season, because I think I read this study. It was something like if you don't replace your carbohydrates like within a few hours, I think it's like 3 hours of training, like it can decrease your performance like 20% the next day. I mean, it's astronomical. And so I
mhm,
I showed him that study. I like pulled it up and I was like, so if you think it's cool just to go home and go to bed after your game because you're not hungry, you are setting yourself up for failure for the rest of the week. And it will just keep eating away at you. And if
mm,
any of you want to play pro, then you don't have what it takes to play pro if you're not willing to go eat when
Yeah.
you're done with training.
A good example of that. So when I was playing rugby, I was in development squads, and we had a lot of like workshops on how to fuel, how to recover, just like your essentials.
Mhm.
And because rugby again, it's a 40-minute workload during each half. So at the end you've got 80 minutes, but it's kind of like football where you're constantly contact with each other. So our coach was actually like, after a game, have the biggest, fullest baguette you possibly can. Like, it doesn't matter what's on it, just get those calories in you. A
Yep.
hot baguette gets into your system, you're fine. Um, we also did a whole workshop and it was bolognese. It was amazing.
That sounds
But like it is important. Like, and I've had discussion with nutritionists and everything else, and it's it literally is the petrol that we put in the car,
mhm.
and it's if you're not willing to do that, you're not willing to go further.
Yep. There's
Um,
only so much stretching I can do and cold tubbing if you're not sleeping and eating, like,
mhm,
period.
100%.
Yep.
On your point of like investing in this bank, I got another really good example from Coach AJ, who was at UW the same time as me. He was like, so it was Coach Mac, Fink, AJ, Cook, and Tony, and our AJ was like the main one that did all the educational sessions with us. We essentially drew this out on the board, and what it is each. So this is preseason. So you're building out each ring during your preseason, so that when you get into in season, you can take out each ring. But during that week, you can fix and repair that ring. So
Yep.
it's like it's this armor around your athlete that you're building, and
Yes.
during in season, you're kind of like patching it up and just making sure that they keep up with this amount of workload.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. I think that's the best way that we can try to prepare them because we can't control the game environment, right? Like if you have hopes to pull somebody at a certain time because it's an easier team, usually it never goes that way, right? Like
Yep.
all of a sudden you're down and you have to win the game, right? So
Hmm.
you have to prepare for the worst, and then if you can pull somebody early and you get less load on their legs, great, but you can't always rely on that. So you have to
Hmm.
do exactly build up. I love it. Build up the armor. I'm going to use that. The
Yeah,
girls
steal
love
it.
it. Yeah. I think what
um,
Ben's saying, like they like it, but they're also like, whatever. Like sometimes I feel like I'm preach. Like, I know they love me and love what we do, but yeah, the bank. Maybe I gotta use the armor. I like that.
yeah, it's just again that really clicked with me because like yeah, that makes sense. Like you can even think of each ring as like strength, power,
Hmm.
speed, endurance, and like each week that armor is getting chinked,
Yep.
and you need to patch it up.
Yep.
Which kind of brings me to my next question, and it's something that I've spoken a lot about on this podcast. And you kind of mentioned it when you had that month where it was just a game a week. You actually saw the reverse effect
Mhm.
when you went back to two games. Post game in soccer, we usually tend to see coaches out in the field afterwards running some with their subs so that they're getting essentially the same mileage
Mhm.
as the players that were on the field. Do you do anything similar where you're still having to put the mileage through their legs of the subs, obviously,
Yep.
or because they do have like the two games, you're sort of like playing the subs so that they're essentially getting the same mileage as the stars on the first game? Does that make sense? The way
No,
I've
it does.
put
I
it?
know. I think, and I hopefully I can answer it correctly. So follow up if I'm not. So there's an NCAA rule that like you can't run people after games. Um,
Ah, okay.
yeah. So we're not allowed to do that, or we would, because I think it would be the easiest way to keep high high and low low, right? And so
Hmm.
that's something we're constantly trying to battle with or at least I am mentally with the low minute playing group is like, are they getting enough, right? But are they also getting like a recovery day?
Mm,
Because they still need recovery to be able to come out to practice to work really hard to make the ones or twos better and then also prepare themselves in case they do have to go into a game. So we will run them um, something I've done in the past is on game day. Like I've done like an optional run with them, like pregame. So I'll get like a group
Mm,
of players who I know maybe aren't going to play. Like I'll reach out to coach, give him the list of names. He'll tell me if somebody is like maybe going to be on the field that game. And the run I'll do, it won't be enough to like crush them, but it'll give them some dosage of mileage on their legs. Or we'll just do it on that next day. So while the high minute players are out, they will run additional runs on that
hmm.
practice to kind of get that mileage up. And so we'll live track that and we'll make sure that they get X amount of percentage for training that day. So usually our games are really small sided because we have less people playing, and then we'll open up their run to add on to that Friday practice. Same thing on like the Saturday or on the Sunday. If we need extra load in and we know that they're not going to get it in the game, I can do it pre-practice or sorry, pre-game as like an optional run for whoever wants to come, or we'll dose it in like after training. So
Yeah.
we
No, that
try
makes
to
sense.
do
I
that, but
didn't know
we
about
just
that rule.
yeah, so we just have like yeah, there's all these constraints, right? So we can't but I
Yeah.
have seen it done in the pro setting. So when I've went and watched a couple of games here, and that's what the athletes do. And our my coaches who have played pro, they said the same thing, that that's very normal in soccer, but because
Hmm.
of different NCAA coaches, and I don't think it's just soccer. I don't think it was soccer related. I think it was other
Yeah.
teams related, that they made a rule that said that you are not,
Yeah.
or at least you're not supposed to be doing it.
That kind of makes sense. Again, NCAA, the rules are uh, questionable sometimes.
Well, it's the same, like, we get, I think most teams get, like a 2 or 3-month lead in before their first game from a soccer standpoint, or at least a
Mm.
month. We get 6 days. I have 6 days before our first
Okay.
yeah,
This is a question that I had from Hale's episode. Jar Hale,
yeah.
Fred.
Oh, you're good.
Um, Notre Dame gets fucked over quite a lot, huh?
For what?
Just
Like, just
in
life?
general.
Oh, I just feel like everybody hates Notre Dame, and I always say it's like, "Hate us because they ain't us," is what I tell my
Mm,
girls. Yeah, I think we get yeah, we our athletes are not required to stay on campus. So our coach, because we don't have a lot of soccer in the area, he tells them to do what's best for them. So if it means go home and like rejuvenate, go play on your club team or go play with like one of the amateur pro teams, whatever it is that they want to play for, they can go do that, or they can stay here and train. But because of that, we do have to do a fitness test and we need to
mm,
assess where they're at just from a health and safety standpoint, because it is hot and we are going to like push them in training. Um, so yeah, so we get, I think it's 6 days of practice, and then we have our first like scrimmage, essentially, like whatever
ah,
they call it. Yeah. And then we get two of those, and then we start regular season games. So I think it's like 14 days before their first regular season game, and they get two exhibition games beforehand. So it is like full
ah,
gas when they get to
yeah.
training. And like last every year is a little bit different. This year we only have three newcomers. So there'll be a little bit of teaching, but not as much. In the past 2 years, they've had like 10 or 12 freshmen. So it's been a lot for them to like get there,
Learn a new
learn the
system.
style of play. Yep, learn how aggressive it is. I feel like our freshmen always say that the game is just like fast and it's physical, right? And so like
Mm.
they've got to catch on to that as quickly as possible to give themselves the best chance to see minutes on the field.
Do you what's your considerations for like the top percentage of games that are hard? So like they're equally matched with their opponents versus their lower um intensity games where they're sort of easier opponents.
I think this probably goes back to your Notre Dame comment, as I feel like everyone always plays really hard when they play Notre Dame, because we're
Yeah.
Notre Dame. And our coaches try to give us the best option to like have a really hard schedule to like just keep our RPI up as high as we can for the tournament. Um, I need to look at our schedule, but I would say there's probably like 2 to 3 games that are going to be like you should win, and we'll probably have a lot of subs in there. And then after that, if that, after that, it's usually our players are on the field the whole time.
Hard to the paint.
Yeah, I think that when people come out to play Notre Dame, they're just like, all right, this is it. Like they've got this game. Like our coach always uses this analogy, and I think it's so true. Like a lot of teams when they're going to come play us and it's a non-conference game, they circle that on their calendar the year before, and they're just like looking to take this team out. And I think you can apply that across every Notre Dame like sport, right? Like for football, I mean, it's the same thing. the our team, all of these teams, like we're so blessed to be around a lot of really talented athletes, and they're really good programs. And so I think people just, when they come to play us, like they come to play us, and they just want,
Yeah.
they want nothing more than to like beat us. And so hopefully we can take control of the game and it's fine. But sometimes, right, it ends up being like a lot closer than you want it to be. But usually we come out on top, but sometimes we don't.
Yeah. And educational wise as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Smart cookies across there.
Exactly. These are some of the, I told Fred this, like, when we were pregnant with Georgia. I'm like, I hope our little girl is, some of these kids are just like, they make me better every day. Like when
Mm,
I'm around our coaching staff, when I'm around these athletes, like they make me want to work harder. They make me
mm,
want to like be better, because they are just phenomenal humans, like inside and out, like to the core of who they are. And I just hope that, because we have her around so many people, that she turns out that way. And like I can't thank this university enough for
mm.
what they've done for our family.
The thing that I've obviously not got kids, but I spend a lot of time with my niece and nephew, and worked enough with kids, and it's monkey see, monkey do. So if they're around the right atmosphere, it will
Yep.
rub off.
Yep, exactly. Yes. And I just hope that happens. I mean, they've rubbed off on me. Like I think I'm a different
Mhm.
person even when I first got here than now, and all in the best ways. Like they've made me a better
Yeah,
person. Yeah.
it's also true that, and again, I believe that you like. So there's this saying in Portugal. That's where I'm originally from, and it translates to you can learn something from everyone, even a dumb person. You can
Yep.
learn not to be them. But I always take that you can learn something from everyone, like in a positive way. But
Yep.
like when you're around these athletes from different backgrounds, different ethnic groups, different, just complete different environments. Like there was two separate occasions that I looked at the athletes I was with and asked them a couple of questions and asked why afterwards. So there was one that was like first in, first out. He was at UW, and like I just, me and him got on really well. We clicked straight away. But he was like one of those players that, like, for him to come up to you and speak to you and be with you, you kind of had to earn his like trust a little bit. So like there was one that was like he was on a cable, he was just doing arms, and I
Mhm.
was like, why do you come in so often? Like, why are you first in, first out? And like what's driving you? And he was like, I I want to have the opportunity to give my family what they've never had, like my sisters, my mom, and everything. And I was like, damn,
Mhm.
what, like why do you feel like you have to do all this to do that? And he's like, well, they've given me everything that I have now, so like I want to give back. And I was like, damn.
Mhm.
And it was just like it you learn that for some of these kids, like there's that different driving factors. It's not just intrinsic or extrinsic. It's like it's a fluctuation. Like they're putting all this work, they're
Mhm.
doing all this to get this outcome.
Yeah.
The other guy, he's now in the league, and like I speak to him often. And while he was getting his degree, obviously scholarship, so he's got free education. So he did like, while like being a starter, he did a major and a minor. So he was
Oh,
like
wow.
he was hustling
Busy.
educational wise to make sure that again he could provide this this life and this
Yep.
environment for his family as well. And like when I saw him getting drafted, I was like, fuck yeah. Like it just like it, I don't know, it's a weird
It's so
feeling, like you're like,
cool.
yeah, it's like, yeah, it was dope to see him be working as hard as he did and then
Mhm.
achieving what he set out to be to do. So like, yeah, I
So cool.
again, you need to speak to your athletes and you need to learn from them, and
Yep. They can
again,
teach
learn
you
from them.
as much as you can teach them, because everybody's in a different season of life. That's
Like, yeah,
awesome.
that, and again, that kind of goes back to this podcast, and I kind of mentioned in the lobby that I just like to talk to coaches and make sure I get a perspective. And I never tell a coach that he's right or wrong or she's right or wrong, because like I never had their mentorship, I never had their experience, I never had their athletes, I never had like any of the circumstances that build a program to be what it is.
Mhm.
So what gives me the right to say that they're wrong? because like, I've never experienced it. So my job is to listen, ask further questions so I can get a full picture of why they do things the way they do it.
Yep. I love that.
What's one piece of advice that you would give coaches coming into this industry or people who want to be a coach?
I have so many thoughts. Um, I would say don't forget what your why is, because
Mm,
if you're chasing a school or a logo or a job or and you forget why you're coaching, you're going to lose yourself in the industry, because every place, no matter where you're at, there's a lot of good things. There's probably a lot of bad things too. And you have to be willing to navigate those waters. But if you always keep focused on what your why is and why you're coaching, and like for me, for example, like in the rough days, like my why is are those athletes. And
mm,
I love them like they're my own children, and I would do anything I could to keep working with them and to keep making them better and excel in life. And same with our coaching staffs, but they're my why. So I just don't forget that on the days that are really hard. So write that down, whatever it is, whether it's family oriented, like, coaching forward oriented, write it down and don't forget it, as to like, that is why you're doing what you're doing, because there'll be days where you'll forget that. And because you either work 70 hours that week, or
mm.
someone treated you poorly, or you didn't get the job that you wanted, or you don't work with the sport team that you want anymore. So like, you have to remember the why and drive towards that, and not all these like external things that can kind of come and go.
Yeah, the why is always very important. And like, I've noticed that the very best coaches I've ever spoken to or been with, they're mostly doing it not for them, but for their athletes. And it's like in an industry that's very ego orientated, like when you get a coach that's just like, yeah, I want to give my athletes the best chance I'm making it. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit different to be like, yeah, I want to work for X
Yep.
club. I want to do X things.
I want to be coach of the year. I want to go do, yeah, like it'll more than likely lead to failure, right? Of just like your career, in my opinion.
Mhm. I think that's one of the most brutal and honest things that Coach Mack has ever said. And it's like his program, you're drinking water from a fire hose. And by the end, you'll know if you want to be in this industry or not.
Yeah, 100%. I remember my first internship, I had to write out like a program. They gave me a scenario and I was just like, I have no idea what to do. I wish I had that card to like see what I wrote, because
Mm,
I had no idea what was going on. And I think I'm learning something new every day, if I'm being honest with you, right? Like, I am still learning different ways to do things. And you're totally right. It's like drinking from a water hose, and it doesn't stop. Like, you keep that doesn't stop,
mm.
because it may just the fire hose may switch from like programming to administrative based things, or selling, or coaches. And it's always just like, who is putting it on you hardest at the moment.
I also think that when when you're speaking to so many coaches, and it's very hard to pin coaches down to have like a full conversation. But like when you do, it's like it's listening, it's like, yeah, it just doesn't stop. Like
Hmm.
there's so many ways to do it. Like people always bring up the there's so many roads that lead to Rome, but like it's also never a bad idea to learn and have a map of the other roads that you
Yep.
take.
Yep.
Like there will be times where you have to pivot.
Yep, exactly.
Um,
100%.
thank you so much for coming on today. I really
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no, thank you. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much.
No, no. I like to find out different ways that coaches are doing things, and you've actually given me a lot of points to consider, especially like when you have like 16 days to prepare athletes, and they have two games a week. Like that is brutal.
It is, yeah, it is a lot. Thankfully, I have a great coaching staff who is just like, "All right, Val, let's go. Buckle up. Let's do this. Like, let's do this."
Again, drinking water from a fire hose.
Yep, exactly. Preseason soccer program, that is it.
So I do some speaking engagements, and I did one in Italy last year, and like literally the year prior I had, I think it was 3.5 to 4 weeks of preseason, which like in hindsight is all right, but like when
Mhm.
you have to prepare them for like our rugby season's like August to May,
Oh,
and
wow.
then they've got like sevens. So that's sevens is May, April to July. Like they've got very little
Like downtime.
prep work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um so like I had 4 weeks and I was like I had to do strength, power, speed and endurance with them, conditioning in 4 weeks. And like the textbooks say you can't do that.
Right.
But like when you have 4 weeks to prepare them, like what are you doing? But like having 16 days is wild.
Yeah, yeah. That's why their summer training is so important. So I just try to make myself as available as I can if they need help,
Mm,
and they know that they have to put the work in because when they get to me, there is no time. Like
mhm,
you're not going to play. Like you probably or you're going to play but you may not play the minutes that you want to because you're not fit enough or you're not strong enough, right? And then you're back in this like cycle. And as you know in the NCAA, you only get 4 years. So if you don't figure it out and you have goals to play after,
mm,
you now have like dwindled those chances down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did the transfer portal impact you at all?
No, no, not really. Ugh, so since we're at Notre Dame, I don't know, this is probably something that not a lot of people know, but we don't take transfer like undergrads. So if
Ah,
you don't start your undergraduate degree at Notre Dame, like you can't just transfer in and finish it. So we can only take like
mm,
graduate students, or it's easier, I guess, to take graduate students. So our soccer program has only taken graduate students. So it's great for like a filler, but like we can't go in and just go get, a new fresh
mm,
goalkeeper or whatever the position may be if we need it. And the same is for like football and any other sport is that it's really hard to get transfers in. So for us, it's great if they have a grad year or if they want to be like non-degree seeking for a year, but they've finished their undergraduate degree. But they can't transfer in and just finish a Notre Dame degree.
see, that makes a lot of sense because I've not actually heard much transfers from Notre Dame.
Yeah. Yep. So people have left and they've actually came back and like finished degrees because they know how important the Notre Dame degree is.
Mm,
But yeah, we can't just go in and be like, oh yeah, we're going to get this like sophomore, midfielder from UNC. They're going to transfer here because that's where they want to be now. Like we can't take like academic wise, it's not okay. So you have to wait for them to finish or they have to come to you and start like a graduate program.
damn.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
or go non-degree
that's
seeking.
quite lucky.
Yeah, yeah, so we just don't, so it's a good and a bad thing, right? So I think in the football world, like, everybody can go in and just get what they want. So if you need a wide receiver, if you need whatever positions
Mm.
you need, you can go in and grab them. But, like, we can't do that as freely as some of the other schools can.
Is that the same for coaching staff? Like,
Mm.
so I got very familiar with how quick things can change because of Coach Mac and the Boer.
Oh, yeah.
And so is it as easy at Notre Dame to
For
like
coaches just to, like, leave and come in?
yeah,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I think
okay.
it's still the same, like, it can be very now, I think a lot of our coaches love working at Notre Dame, so I've had the same head coach for all of my, like, teams I have at Notre Dame, so my throws coach has been the same the whole time, my soccer coaches have been the same the whole time. Um, so I think there's less turnover here because this is kinda like where people wanna be, so
Mm,
they wanna be at Notre Dame, so they're not, like, looking to leave. So thankfully, I feel like we don't have as much, but there has been some coaching changeover. And when it happens, it just happens really quick. And sometimes you survive and sometimes you don't. And by survive, I mean sometimes
yeah, you stay.
you get
Yeah,
asked to stay, and sometimes it's like you can interview if you want, but I think it's like dependent on the position, you can
yeah.
make that decision or not. On the Olympic side, what's nice is like if you have a coach, change, it doesn't mean that you're going to lose your job. But on the football or like the basketballs, like
Mm,
those are tough because sometimes they are attached. But on the Olympic side, they try to do a good job of protecting us. So my director would, he would have the say
mm.
on if I kept that team or not. And if they wanted to make a change, then he would probably just give me new teams and move another coach into that role. Yeah. So
That's
not
quite nice
not
about
as
it.
not as crazy as football, but
Yeah,
that's like its own world.
yeah. That's its own
Yeah.
beast.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
could yeah, that was rough.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you so much for coming on and spending some time with
Yeah,
me.
no, thank you so much.
Um, if you let people know where they can sort of contact you and ask further questions if they have any.
Yeah, so I think my Instagram handle is Valerie Georgia. And there's no hyphenations, no nothing. So my middle name is Georgia. And then it's the same, I think, for Twitter and Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn.
You've also got some research articles hopefully coming out soon.
I do, yes. Yep. So Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research should have my first paper of my dissertation. And then I've got another one under review. And I think we've had a few actually that pubbed from stuff we've done at Notre Dame. So that could probably be its own podcast. We have some thermography stuff with like load and recovery that just came out,
Ooh.
thermography. We just recently did like a hot pants study. We called it the hot pants study, where we looked at compression wear and recovery and the rate of recovery. That one is still under review. And then a couple body composition papers for like DEXA scans on whether to cut off the feet
Mm.
or the head. What am I forgetting? I think I'm forgetting one more, but I can't remember. So yeah, so I do have some papers that are coming out. So praise the Lord there. Hopefully they
Damn.
all go through.
I might have to get you back on unless you've got
Yeah, let's do
time.
it. Yeah, we can have a research podcast.
Yeah. Because so I'm actually I did some research on a uni while doing my bachelor's, and it was looking at the effects of cooling on a heat chamber. So it's like kind of imitating like high temp environments and the ability to go in cooler. So like I think it was a couple degrees below um, body temp,
Okay.
and we cooled Vask, so it was neck and legs. We did baseline beforehand, and I got 22 minutes incremental test on a bike in a heat chamber, and then we cooled for one of the studies, and I got 4 minutes more by going in cooler, which
Very cool.
yeah.
I
So
was
yeah, we'll
at
do a full
Yeah,
podcast on
we
research.
definitely need to do something. Yes, that we did like a preliminary study. We're hopefully going to revamp it within the next year and redo some things differently. But at the University of Miami, I heard this. I was at a conference for the
Mm,
ACC, and they're doing some like cooling during training sessions. So they
okay.
do like a 5 minute cool exposure, like in football training. And it was really, really interesting. And I've never heard the technology that they want to use. I haven't read the paper yet, but the idea is definitely
Hmm.
there, and I definitely think there's some validity to, like, having these cooling sessions, like, with
Yeah.
integrated in training, especially if you train in, like, a hot area or if you're a
Mhm.
summer, fall-based sport. I mean, everybody could benefit from something like that.
I'll give you some devices that I've looked into. So you can
Yes,
have a look.
please
Yeah.
do it, because I was, like, fascinated at this conference, and I asked a couple questions, and I don't think they understood because I was talking about, like, RMSSD and how they were normalizing it, and they didn't really have an answer for me, which then red flagged where my brain
Mm.
went because everybody's RMS, there's no
Methods.
norms, they're all different, and so because he couldn't answer that, he's like, "Well, we just don't have to do that," and I was like, "No, no, no, you actually have to do that." Like, or you're using the technology's algorithm, which isn't always reliable. So
Mm.
you
Yep.
definitely need that raw metric and figure out how you're going to do that. But that was besides the point because the idea was still really interesting and there's definitely something possibly there. So now my brain went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. No, I'll yeah, we'll speak after the podcast.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Appreciate you. Have a good
Thank you so much.